One of the items we need to make for the Carabiner shuttle pen is the spring for the refills. And so to do that, it's going to be done with the tool that is called a coil within Fusion 360. But first of all, we need to tell it that we're going to begin with a new component, as we normally should. And we'll call this the refill spring. Okay, so refill spring, and we'll tell it OK. Now, before we get started on anything like this, you always need to have a decent sketch to go along to give you the information. So it's always best to start off by making a good sketch. So here's a somewhat crude yet adequate sketch. It tells us the information that we've used, we've been able to gather with our dial caliper and machinist scale and things like that. So we know that the overall diameter is 0.16. So to the center is where we're concerned about. So from center to center, it would be half the diameter. And so we would subtract 0.01 from this, and that would mean that from the center of the coil to the center on the other side would be 0.15. We also know that the spring, the free length of the spring is 0.94, but it'd be about 0.75 with some compression that you would have with the spring inside the pen. We know that we've got a 0.94 pitch. We've got a 0.01 diameter wire, and there's 12 turns of the coil. With that information in hand, we're going to come up here to create. We're going to tell it that we want to make a coil. We'll pick on the horizontal plane, and we're going to tell it first of all that we start at the center there, right there at the origin, and my diameter is going to be 0.15. Now, then we've got a table that comes up. In fact, quite frequently when we do this, you'll end up getting quite a fat coil, and so on, that it's thrown up there by default. So you may get something that's rather large. But because I'd already used this information, that's why we're a bit smaller. So the number of revolutions that we're going to have is going to be 12. And with the 12, that's fine. And that helps us understand some of what we've got. The height of that is going to turn out at 0.75. Okay, now that's a pretty healthy spring, and that's not what our pen refill spring looks like at all. So the problem is right here, the diameter of the cross section, the section size is only 0.01. So that changes the look quite a bit. And that gives me my basic coil. Now it is important, this 0.75 height is quite important in understanding what we're doing. If you examine the coil closely, there's a tight coil down here at the bottom and one at the top to wrap this spring off. So we'll tell it coil once again. That we go here, go to that same coil tool, and with that we're going to tell it again we're on this plane because we're still down at the starting level, and let's tilt it just slightly so we can get in and see the center point. So we're going to start here once again, and again the value is 0.15. So it's lying right on top of itself. And it throws that up because it says, do you want to cut things away? But no, we're going to join. And then, excuse me, what we need to be doing with this is we need to be going in a negative direction. Now, the number of revolutions in this case is only going to be 2 at best. And with those 2, as we go, we're going to go downward. So the height is actually going to be negative 0.03, and that should send us downward. We get a little error right there, so we need to have a little bit of separation on that. The section size still stays here at 0.01, and there with all that information in. Now if we take a look at it, we're in good shape. That gives us a nice bottom. We're going to repeat this at the top. The only thing that is different, and you may not be familiar with this yet, I go to construct, and I'm going to tell it that I want to pull a plane, an offset plane, and the plane I want to come from right here, and I want to go upward with that plane separation. I want to go 0.75 because that's the height, and that places this right up at the level of the top of the spring. So now I'll say coil once again, but this time as we're going to add in, the center point is still the same. It's the same center point all the way through, and so we're going to be right on this point. I'm going to go here, and as I start to spread it out, once again it's 0.15. Okay, and the information that we will put on there is that I'm going to be 2 turns. That's the same. The height is going to be only 2 turns, and the height is going to be about 0.03. I believe that will work out on that. The section size is still 0.01, and there we go. So that would finish off our spring, and that gives us a good representation for the spring that is on the Carabiner shuttle pen.